Hey, it's Steve Riley. Welcome to this episode of Great Practice, Great Life. And I am thrilled to have you here, and I'm thrilled to share my new friend, our guest, Ron Chapman. Ron is, as I said in the intro, an incredibly skilled trial lawyer, prolific writer, but I really want to start with how Ron got started in the legal field, which is his military background. So with that, let me first say, Ron, thanks for spending the time with us. Thanks for being here, being part of our community. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Steve. I'm really happy to be here and share a bit about my practice.
I'm thrilled to have you here because you really have done a fantastic job of interweaving your purpose, your mission in through your practice. And you've got a very unique background. So let's back up. How in the world did you end up in the Marine Corps and how did you become a JAG officer there?
You know, the crazy thing is the last thing I wanted to do was be a lawyer. I'd seen my dad as a lawyer. He spent most of his time defending malpractice cases. He loved it, but I just didn't think it was for me. I decided to go into the Marine Corps right after September 11th. In fact, I was in a recruiter's office on September 12th. He said, "Go back and you're in college." I was a freshman in college. He said, "Go back, finish your degree, come back as an officer." He said literally this: "I will have plenty of bodies walking through this door in the next few days, and most of them won't be on their path towards a law degree." I think I owe that person a lot, even though it would have been great to enlist. He really set my path. So went back to college while working up a very complicated Marine Corps officer package. And I ran into, and the dedication of my most recent book is to this gentleman, ran into Mark Rigstad. Mark Rigstad was a philosophy professor. I was a philosophy major. And we went over the law of armed conflict and the law of war and peace and von Clausewitz and all of these weighty questions. And when I learned that I could do that inside of the Marine Corps, I said, "Wow, actually, this law thing is probably something I should pay attention to." Switched my contract, went to law school, went back into the Marine Corps, and eventually I found myself in Afghanistan making the same judgment calls that these legal scholars, these military legal scholars were wrestling with. And that was really one of the only places in the world that I could have engaged in something that really merged how I feel about philosophy and how I feel about law together, to give me that sort of satisfaction. And I moved on from government eventually, but that's what really got me my start. I'm sure we'll talk a bit about me getting out and why I made that decision. But at that point in time, being a lawyer, being a thinker, and being a Marine was exactly where I needed to be.
Why did you choose this niche? How did it unfold?
Yeah.
How did this giant firm that you built start?
One of the things some people could say is, "Hey, you have this philosophical choice, but then you go and for the most part, do healthcare. You could go to the public defender's office and all of that." And there's a lot of hardworking public defenders out there, no doubt. But there's a lot of public defenders that don't have the resources and have a significantly high caseload, and jumping into that environment may not always lend itself to the type of opportunities in terms of development of the law. And so I honestly looked at law, and specifically white collar law, to find out where the changes were being made. And one thing that we found pretty quickly, or I found along with discussions with other people, was that in highly regulated industries, those seem to be the cases that drive the future of litigation and drive our constitutional decisions that are made. There was a period of law when Nixon was being prosecuted, where there's a lot of Nixon era cases that we see. Well, the same thing happened when we saw Enron, where there was a lot of Enron type cases that were driving our constitutional decisions. And the same thing has happened in the healthcare arena over the last, I would say, 10 years. A lot of healthcare cases are driving constitutional decisions for the Supreme Court. It just so happened that my father had a healthcare law firm for, I think, 30 years at that point in time. And so I said, "Hey, I'd love to join you, but I need to do mostly federal criminal defense and government investigations work. That's where my passion is, and I need to have the freedom to do that. I can also work on some other things, but fundamentally, my goal was to drive litigation forward that would hopefully change the state of the law. And as it stands right now, I think we've had maybe 7 or 8 cases up in front of the Supreme Court. We've had amicus briefs on behalf of interested parties before the Supreme Court. I've been in most circuit courts of appeal, litigating issues. And so that has really allowed us opportunity to try cases, aggressively defend government action, but then also engage in the larger conversation development of the law.
What does your week look like from a focus perspective when you're not in trial? When you're not trying the case and you're out the other 6 months of the year working on the firm, how do you operate? What's a typical week look like for you?
Yeah, usually will involve some type of travel. I was in Oklahoma City on Monday for a hearing, and then Columbus on Friday for a hearing, and then I'll be in Knoxville, Tennessee for a hearing the following Monday. So a tremendous amount of trial regardless, and that takes up a lot of time. I've seen the inside of an airplane way too much. But when I'm at home and I can carve out my own time, I think you mentioned getting into a bit of morning routine. I might get a bit ahead of you here, but I think we'll start there. I'd say the workout is the most important thing that you got to get in. I think that everybody should be getting outside, getting some sort of workout in. This morning I lifted. Sometimes it'll be some cardio that I can sneak in. And then the other thing is I like to have a goal off in the distance. I like to do a bit of mountain climbing. And so my goal is another Rainier trip, Mount Rainier in Washington for July. So I've got to make sure that I get my workouts in so that I can make that trip. And I just keep leapfrogging that goal so that I have a reason to get in and do the hard work. That's the big thing. I need that struggle. You know, if you read Nietzsche, you got to have that struggle somewhere in life and keep pushing forward. So then when it comes to the actual work, I think phone use is killing us quite a bit. And it's very easy for us to be tethered to this thing, which causes us to be reactive to everybody else's problems. And one of the things I think about is the fact that kind of at a new day and age where somebody has the ability to intrude on your consciousness whenever they decide to. If you have your phone ringing and you have your email inbox open and you're answering all of these things way too quickly, especially as a leader with a lot of staff, you will burn yourself out quickly. So I think, like you said, focus time. I definitely carve out a lot of time where I'm just not going to be available for those emergency needs. But one of the things that you should do is create a bucket, a space, a slot in time where your clients, your staff will be able to engage in that conversation with you so that they funnel everything. You'd be surprised how many times I tell a client or somebody else to set a meeting to talk about whatever it is they thought that was their biggest emergency. And then by the time it comes time for the meeting, the thing is really not that much of an emergency. They learn that lesson maybe once, maybe twice, and they bother you a lot less with things that aren't that important. So I carve out that focus time and really work on priorities. I love to use To Do on Microsoft as a way to organize my tasks. And as I'm brainstorming, I throw certain things down there. And my rule is I only do it myself if I can't delegate it out comfortably to somebody else, which really whittles down the grunt work that I have to do. Good work, but certainly the the grunt work, and allows me to focus more on strategy, which is really where I should deploy myself for a lot of the cases that I have, especially so that I can get the people that work with me and work for me opportunities to do new things, and grow a bit themselves. We don't want to rob them of that benefit, so we delegate and train as much as we can. And that's most of my day. I tend to close it down 6, 7, 8, 9, depending on when I need to be done. And I try to carve out a little bit of writing time every single day to work on the next book. And I spend a lot of my time on airplanes actually writing as well. So I've got one more coming out soon.
What are you doing now to protect yourself from burnout? I mean, how are you protecting your head, your confidence, and your energy?
Yeah, well, the good thing is loving what you do makes it a lot easier to do it, right? So a lot less feels like work. But it's not really just carving out time outside of work for me to alleviate stress. It's about making sure that you work in a less stressful way. That's the most important thing for me. So a lot of people think you need this separate time where you can recover, like work is a workout and you need to recover from it. I would say that mindfulness is a huge part of my journey. I started it early, a lot of meditation. I continue to do it. It's changed a lot for me, avoiding, ruminating and worrying about your next trial or replaying that hearing in front of a judge that didn't go so well. Now things pretty much leave my mind when they're over, and it's very relaxing. It's good for the blood pressure. Work out every single day along with some sort of mindfulness, stretching is a huge part about that. I'm a firm believer that everybody should be in therapy. I have thankfully, a JD psychologist that I see, not just to talk about anything that's going on with me, but also to talk about as a gut check as to whether or not I'm handling a problem the right way. And that gives me a lot of peace in knowing that, my strategy or the way that I approach something was effective. Do the deep work to find out why you are doing certain things, and what worked for you versus what didn't work for you in terms of getting through your day, and just making that assessment and changing if you can.